Second roundtable, second session about new space. If you were not there before, my name is Stéphane Berensky. I'm the editor of the Aérospatial magazine in French. And I won't be incognito when I will have my badge. As I said before, I've been in this business for 3 decades, and I've been told about new space for more than 2.5. And to discuss the disruptions brought by new space, we're talking today with 5 high-profile panelists from 5 former new space companies, even if they were not told that way at the time. Well, one of them is an agency, but when I knew him, he was in the industry. So, talking with us today, we have, and of course, it just shut down. We have Rick Ambrose, a Vice-président executive for space at Lockheed Martin. We have John Paul Hemingway, Director General of SES Networks. We have Daniel Neuenschwander, who is Director of Space Transportation at ESA. We have André-Hubert Roussel, who is Executive President of Ariane Group. And we have the honor to have Mr. Rakesh Sasibhushan, I hope I did not stop your name, who is CEO of Antrix, the commercial arm of the Indian Space Research Organization. Well, so you've been, all of you, in this business for a long time, and someday people came, moved your business, and called them new space. I'd like that each of you present a little where it stands and what was your first encounter with new space? You have a mic. Okay. Really close to the chin.
Yeah. Antrix and ISRO, our commercial operations, launch operations started in 1999. But those days were early days. We didn't have that much launch capacity to serve the commercial market. But the initial launches were mostly the university payloads or the payloads from some research organizations. It gradually grew. And we saw the first new space company approach us in 2015. That was Spaceflight, once US sort of liberalized its export of small satellites. And we had a contract with them. We launched 4 Lemur satellites of Spire Global in 2015 in PSLV C30. After that, the association with new space companies has been very good, both with Spaceflight and ISL Netherlands, and also TIVAC, we are having good relation, then Planet in the US, and then many other smaller operators also. And today, I would say that the new space companies bring us at least 50 to 60% of our launch revenue. And we are looking forward to a larger association with these companies in the future too.
Daniel?
Thank you. I think there are 3 major factors which were brought in with this, I would say not really new space, but acceleration in space. And this is point number 1. Time to market is certainly is taking a different dimension, and the acceleration of all the development cycles. Number 2, of course, the competition is heavily increased. And if we speak about transportation systems, it's not only the number of launches, which is often discussed in public, but it's much more also the mass which is launched. And third factor is certainly the private investments. Private investments are an opportunity, but a challenge at the same time, especially for Europe. It gives a new perspective of industries on the market with private investments, which of course have to be seen also in the specific dimension of space transportation with accessible markets, and we are in a market which is not totally free. And we have to keep in mind these 2 dimensions. So what are the type of consequences for Europe out of this? It's certainly that we have to consequently fly European for institutional payloads to give also a certain stability to our companies. Number 2 is that nevertheless we take the full we fully embrace this new dimension. I think that's absolutely crucial. It is not, we are from ESA not defending un repli sur soi, not try to go back and just focus on one segment, but to really embrace it and to reply to both of them. And I spoke about the load factor, or the mass to be brought to orbit. I think we have also to broaden the equation. It's not only about access to space, it's also about transport in space and return from space. And at the end of the day, we have to look at this in a broader dimension with what is the mass to orbit, but also the mass which is retrieved from orbit. So to keep a long story short, I think the consequence for ESA is that we will come and propose a comprehensive portfolio of space transportation solutions to our decision makers. Once again, access to, transport in, and return from space.
So on my side, the first contact with new space was in 2014 or in this area, I believe. I was in charge of launchers in what was called Astrium Space Transportation at that point of time. And in fact, what is new space? New space, we realized that it's an acceleration of the economical growth, thanks to the opportunity of the new services that can be rendered with space assets, let's say, and thanks to the technical innovation, and thanks as well to the decrease of cost and the decrease of price. It was a really, I think for Europe, as I was in, let's say, legacy, I'm the only one to come from a legacy, to create, let's say, and to adapt to this, and it was really a wake-up call for us. And subsequently to create Ariane Group by consolidating the quite, let's say, dispatch industry for more efficiency. And second, to develop a new launcher, Ariane 6, which is about to fly next year for the first time, with drastic, let's say, cost reduction, but as well drastic versatility. To open, let's say, all kind of missions in terms of transportation that are needed by this new application that are coming in the field of space economy, let's call it like that. So this was really my first, and we are, let's say, accelerating everything, and we will continue, obviously, thanks to the digital, thanks to a number of things, innovation, and as well more industrial efficiency to continue to support, because as launcher, we are an enabler of this new space economy to support this development and its accelerated development.
Thank you. So at SES, I'd say we've embraced new space as a set of disruptive technologies or disruptive business models, whether that goes back to simply using things like electric propulsion on our satellites so that you're focusing more on the payload and less on the fuel, whether you're having payloads that are 100% digitized, allowing us to do complete flexibility over how you deliver traffic, what parts of the Earth that you cover. We certainly embraced the launches side of the new space, and we were the first people to use a flight-proven Falcon 9 with SpaceX, which you could probably imagine was quite a leap of faith for us to do so. And then as SES, they first invested and then acquired what we would argue is one of the earlier new space players in terms of O3B networks, where we launched the first and only still operational non-geostationary orbit satellite constellation. Yeah, that was really about the production line satellites, as we call them, by launching batches of 4 identical satellites into the medium Earth orbit, the 8,000-kilometer orbit constellation. We've launched up to 20 of those now, 4 very recently in March, actually, with our partners at Ariane over at French Guiana. So, we see that these are a continuous step of evolutions. But I think the final piece I'd say is, I think what makes it really interesting in this concept of new space is fundamentally challenging what people can expect from space communications. It's challenging what you can experience over this as a user walking around the street, whether you're on an aircraft or whether you're on a ship, should be able to get the same experience as you can over fiber optic cables. We've enabled that with some of our most recent satellites. And also digital transformation. We should expect, because we've integrated our satellite solutions into cloud networks, we've certified with the world's largest cloud providers so that you can do big data, IoT, analytics on your customers and platforms and passengers as if you're connected to the cloud, because you can have high-performance satellite connectivity. So I think it's the combination of what's going on the ground and in space that makes this concept of new space really interesting.
Thanks. I'd say probably at least a decade we've been dealing with innovative companies that have come on, if you want to call that new space. But I've talked to folks in the past where I kind of say new space, old space is kind of false dichotomies. Space is hard. And you better treat it like it's new space every time if you're going up, and whether it's a satellite or you're putting a human being up in orbit. Now, of course, an established company and new companies are different. Lockheed Martin's 106 years old. In space, we're about half that, so we joke we're kind of the new guys in the company, or at least the teenagers, whatever you want to call it. But the real message here is you have to keep reinventing yourself. And I think it was said by a fellow panelist. This is a great time. We track this. We're using 900. We think it just broke 1,000 new start companies that are coming along. It's very exciting to see that that many people are interested, because many of the companies up here pioneered the way and enabled it so many companies can come in with different business models, different offerings. And our company is bring it on. We need a robust marketplace. So we're going to create a LEO economy, lunar economy, and then ultimately to get to Mars. We need a vibrant marketplace, many players there, many innovators coming on board. 5 generations in the workplace. We need that diversity. And not just of our employee base, but also the companies and the ideas and the thoughts that can be brought to bear to make this happen and make it sustainable. Because we've been here about 20 years ago, we had a big surge. But how do we make it sustainable and ongoing as we go forward? I think that's what's important to us as a company, where we think we have an obligation as Lockheed Martin to help sustain that and help mentor and do protege for small companies and startups. It's why we invest in Rocket Labs and TIVAC and those companies to bring that capability forward. So it's a great time in space, exciting. Hopefully you all see that. A lot of capabilities going, and hopefully we'll be putting someone back in the moon here shortly. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. I think, except maybe for Mr. Ambrose, you're all too shy, because all of you have been disrupting the market at one point, and you've been, well, it's one of the keywords on the new space. Antrix, we are among the first to propose really shared launches with many piggyback payloads. ESA and Ariane Group, well, and previous companies, previous entities, you disrupted the launch market by someday deciding to sell launches. Well, it was long ago, it was 40 years ago, but it was that was really disruptive at the time. Yeah. SES, I remember when you launched in the mid-80s satellite by television by satellite with bouquet of many programs. Who would buy that? Well, everyone actually. And Lockheed Martin, you were there before even everyone else was there. So now you're confronted to a new acceleration. And sorry, it's an unprepared question, that one. How each of you deal with the need to accelerate decision-making processes to face all these new contenders that are coming. Please.
Sorry. Well, I'll start with that. It's like, again, you have to self-disrupt. And what you're really talking about is velocity and delivery into the market. So what we say, we have to deliver our systems twice as fast, half the cost, and then we have to invest in those areas and make decisions quickly to enable that, right, as we go. So how do we build agile, common kind of components that could meet that need? If you go back historically, space started, it was tough. So we had purpose-built systems. If you're going to go to Mars or do a probe around the sun or even a communication satellite on Earth, it was purpose-built. Now, how do we move to more commonality, more a production mindset to shorten those cycle times that's digitally enabled? Every satellite maker out there is trying to do software-defined satellites, so now you can reprogram missions and capabilities, much faster rate. So being agile, sustainable, driving the ability to make those decisions is what's key. But that's true of any business that has a lot of competition, and that's why it's healthy. People innovate, people make decisions, right? not organizations. Now, you can hinder that, but that's what's key about this, and being focused on your mission and on your customer and how you need to deliver that capability.
Yeah, so maybe one of the biggest decisions that we as a satellite operator need to make is procuring and selecting the vendors for our next generation of satellites. And one of the ways that we did this differently last time when we said who's going to build our next generation of MEO satellites, we didn't really go through this, here's a spec, here's an RFI, here's an RFQ. Of course, we went through a selection process. We said, here's the traffic profiles we need to do on the Earth. Here's all the mobile customers, here's the aircrafts, here's the ships, and said, there's a traffic pattern, have at it. You guys come back with us with the very best designs that you can, using the very best technologies that you have at your disposal, and you tell us what that best satellite design looks like. Of course, we need to make sure it met all the right criteria we had, and fundamentally we said, and it better be really flexible, because we have no clue what's coming down the pipeline in these 5 to 15-year horizons, which is what you're really dealing with when you build satellites. You're building for at least 5 years out, and then probably that's a lifetime of 15 plus 20 years at that. Anyone in this room who thinks they can predict what people are doing with data in 15 to 20 years' time, good luck. So that's one of the things that I say one of the biggest decisions that we make, and how we have to change how we go about that so we can speed things up.
So on our side, first of all, we have done a lot on Ariane 6, which is a launcher which would have been developed in 5 years. And traditionally, the cycle is more 10 years, and I think it's unique in the world. And I cross fingers we will succeed, but nevertheless, I think it's already a big acceleration. How did we do that? With, let's say, accelerating, and this was mentioned already this morning, and leveraging the capabilities of digital. And all the, let's say, Ariane system is now end-to-end developed around data and allowing fast collaboration and fast decision-making in the choices that we have to do. The second topic is as well from the beginning compared to, let's say, previous launchers. It is, let's say, designed to be evolutive, and we are currently working already. Haven't not flown first time, but we are already working on how it is going to evolve immediately to provide more services, to be more cost-effective, etc. The future obviously doesn't stop here with Ariane 6, and we have created as well, and we have traditionally, let's say, the space world was, at least the legacy one, was a little bit a close circle, let's say, of specialists and technical passionate people. And we are taking a lot of initiatives to go for open innovation and to accelerate the process of innovation. And typically, one example, we opened with our French agency, and now ESA has as well joined, ArianeWorks, which is, let's say, some kind of startup model where small teams interact very quickly with other startups and contractualize and accept to fail fast, as we say. I don't like to fail fast, but at least to learn fast. And typically, the first example, 3 weeks after opening this ArianeWorks, we have signed the first contract with a startup. In the traditional world, it was something like 6 months to 1 year to be able to move at this speed. So this is a factor of acceleration to continue to offer and to fulfill more customer expectations in an agile way, and to do it more cost-effective.
Well, decision-making with 22 shareholders, which are our member states, I'm probably a bit in a different dimension than my 3 neighbors to the left. But I would like to underline the strengths also of the system, because we have pluriannual programs, and once a decision is taken, it is really strong. Where we really have to accelerate is in the implementation of the programs once they have been decided. I think André-Hubert already described the model on Ariane 6, where we, from a governance point of view, gave a lot of responsibility to industry, which allows this decision-making he just explained. And I think it's crucial, and it's why I repeat it, that we underline that we are just now preparing the competitiveness improvement at the horizon 2025. So it is not only about the maiden flight, about putting the launcher on the market. It is about now to already, in incremental logic, take the right decisions in a prospective way. So that's one dimension, let's say, in the programs where we speak about independent access to space, like Ariane 6. There is another dimension we would like to embrace, which is more linked to the dimension of services, meaning we were rather focused up to now on space transportation systems from ESA side, and I really push internally the space transportation service dimension. And for this, we'll also go to the next ministerial. I'm sorry, I prefer to prepare the future than to speak about the past, Stefan. But I mean, it's really important that Europe takes this on board, goes in this dimension, and it is clear that for a startup will not be able to reply to an RFQ of a space agency with a pile of documents of 30 centimeters. We really have to simplify drastically the way we pass the contracts, and of course we have an accountability towards our member states. So it is the right tuning between allowing industry and startups to be fast, to be time to market is certainly one of the key aspects to take into account. The other aspect is of course to ensure the accountability. And last but not least, from a personal point of view, after all ministerial decisions, you have to adapt a bit the organizations depending on the results you get. I think it's important that you also, as a manager, look to the size of the teams. And if you look to companies who are really successful, it's interesting to see that the size of the teams are off. There is a correlation also about the capacity of teams of having innovative ideas, but then also bringing them through. Having an idea is one thing, to bring it through the system is another one.
Well, continuing where Daniel has left off, governmental systems are probably not ideal for quick decision making, and we do have a problem there. But India is pretty much a closed market, and we are not exposed to a very high level of competition within India, and probably that is protecting us to some extent, and that's a confession. And we know that the new space that is emerging in India definitely will give us a lot of competition, and that is welcome too. And we have to focus on areas where we can complement this and then partner them so that we can serve the country and serve the commercial market well and bring in revenue to the government. We are very much a government company. But having said that, we have a mechanism in which we have something called the Space Commission, which is a mini governmental body that government has constituted, which is empowered with all the powers to take the decisions. So this mechanism of decision making has certainly helped us in our programs, and that is how you see the success of Indian space program is basically because of a different structure, the stature that ISRO and Antrix enjoys in the country. The government very much supports us wholeheartedly, and the proposals whatever has been put up has never been shot down by the government. All the proposals are seen. Of course, all the proposals, they know that when we put up a proposal, the societal aspect and how it is useful to the country will be very carefully studied. And we normally don't put up mega proposals. Of course, the manned space mission is, of course, a deviation from that. But if you put that aside, we have seen that most of our proposals are very much very objectively prepared to serve some segment, and this has been appreciated by the government, and this mechanism of decision making has been given to us, which has helped us in performing the functions efficiently.
Well, I've been in Bangalore a few years ago for a presentation on Indian space. Well, from the outside, the Bangalore Space Expo. From the outside, it seems that India is quite, let's say, closed, government-driven, monolithic, and I was really amazed to meet many local companies. I've been told several times that some of your launch activities might be privatized in the near future. Do you see new space companies as a possibility within India?
Big question, yeah. As you know, India is still very much a closed domain as far as space is concerned. It is highly regulated, and here Department of Space and ISRO are both the service provider and the regulator. So this poses a problem to all the private players within India and also the companies outside who wants to do space business in India. Now, we are seeing that the companies that are associated, we have about 450 companies associated with ISRO in its launch vehicle programs, but almost all of them are subcontractors. They pick up some orders to execute some kind of service. And the regulations that are existing is preventing these companies to climb the ladder and become a larger player. And because of this is a chicken and egg problem, what will change, So we are seeing that there are no big corporates in India in space. And the big corporates whom I have personally went and met and talked to for making investment in space are also very skeptical, because they are public companies, they are answerable to their shareholders, and they don't know because of the regulatory framework what will happen. So unless they make a big move, they won't be able to put the pressure on the government to change. And the government will not change because ISRO has got a big stature and they are doing a good job, that government will also be skeptical about changing the environment. This is a scenario. But we are seeing that for the first time, a Space Act is going to come in India, and we are seeing probably by the end of this year it will be enacted. And the wind is that that has got radical changes that are proposed in that Space Act. We do not know what exactly it is, but it is expected that will allow some freedom and some deregulation in space. And if you remember, in India, if you look at the telecom sector, that was also a closed sector, and Department of Telecom was both the service provider through its PSU arms, BSNL, MTNL, and all that. They were also regulating. But the policies by the Narasimha Rao government in the 1990s to industrialize and to remove the constraints has brought in a lot of private companies into telecom. And in 1994, the Telecommunication Act came. And this was followed up by the separate regulator, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, in 1997, which has done wonders now. Indian telecom, the kind of revenues that are flowing, the number of companies. Of course, the recent disturbances are due to something else. But otherwise, this industry has really come and is performing well because of those regulatory changes that was done in the 90s. Probably we are ready for such a regulation now, and we are looking forward to what is Space Act bringing, and post Space Act, what will happen to India. That will decide how India is going to move forward.
Well, gentlemen, you will have maybe new contenders and new partners in the near future in India. Have to be introduced in your equations. Mr. Neuenschwander, I've seen the preparation of the ministerial at the end of the year that there will be a new line of products, a new line of budget in the space transportation program regarding, newcomers in the very small launcher market. Could you explain us what you're looking for with that?
Yes, sure. Number one, everything what we do is and what we prepared to be proposed for subscription to our member states at Ministerial Council, which takes place end of November in Seville, Spain, is under the umbrella of innovation. That's clear in terms of what we do, but also on how we do it. And the key words here are really service orientation, I already spoke about it, flexibility and cost reduction. And in this context, and I will just go to your question more in detail, but I would like also to say a few words because it also applies to the programs which are ongoing and on which we increase or we work on the competitiveness increase. I think overall we really have to focus on mission flexibility, number one, and with this especially on the versatility of the upper stages of all our launchers under development. Having said this, how to embrace more the service dimension. On the service dimension, there are two aspects. Number one, we want to have a new approach on how we conduct the programs. I said a few words with your previous question about this. By having a permanent open call, let's say, on space transportation services, and if a good idea comes in, it's evaluated, of course, there are certain criteria to be fulfilled, and provided that the corresponding state is supporting it, we are of the opinion that we should just go for it under one condition, that it is really driven by an economic operator. This is a fundamental aspect which we would like to bring in under this new space transportation commercial service dimension in ESA. Another aspect I would like to bring in, which is for me both on the commercial side but also on some institutional work, is to set standards. I think what you did demonstrating the capacity to deploy a lot of light satellites at one time was certainly a challenge. We take up the challenge, by the way. We plan for a Vega proof of concept flight for light satellites early autumn, and we have for this launch 42 payloads which are selected. And I fully agree in this sense that we have to embrace this, and we will also propose this with Ariane 6. I think on light satellites meaning below 200 kilo, we have to set standards, and by setting the standards, we will also give a lot of flight opportunities to a new industrial ecosystem which is growing rapidly.
Well, Mr. Roussel, we tend at the time to consider the relationship between Ariane Group and New Space through the competition with SpaceX, which is, or maybe not, a new space company. But, well, with Ariane Works, you showed that you could have other kind of relationship. It's more, let's say, on a technical point of view rather than commercial point of view. How do you see this evolving in the future? Will you expand your activities with all those newcomers in the field of technology, in the field of, well, maybe marketing? I don't know. What are your perspective on that?
Yes, I mentioned only Ariane Works, but we have as well a number of, let's say, partnerships to look at new business models, etc. With, close with the academic world and with the overall, let's say, new ecosystem which is, let's say, emerging around this new space economy. Maybe what I would like to say is, first, I believe that in Europe, and by the way, it's demonstrated by the US and China, we need, if we really want to develop in this new space economy, we need this to be based on a very strong institutional demand. This is key to have, let's say, a new ambition, and I think ESA and the European Commission are really going in this direction to create this strong basis that will, let's say, be some kind of puller or pusher, I don't know, of the overall development of this new space. And as Daniel said, I think services is key. Be closer, being flexible, be very close to the customer needs and to the creativity, and make the idea happen quickly and cheaper than before, and be innovative in the business model, not only in the technology. This is what we organize for. And I'm sure that Europe will be as well in this overall landscape very successful.
Mr. Hemingway, well, you described the way you procured the O3B mPower system by just saying, okay, this is what we want to do. And, well, quite interestingly, your provider is not really known as being a new space company because it's Boeing. Does this mean that actually the new space, non-new space differentiation is just obsolete already?
It's an interesting point. I mean, I think everybody who works in this sector has to embrace the concepts of new space. We talked about it before. Continuous innovation, rapid innovation, spinning up agile teams. These are all things that everybody has to do. But they just reacted. And to be clear, all the people who responded to this next generation of Constellation said, okay, we're up for this challenge. And I think they all embraced a lot of the concepts that we're looking for. So, of course, there are startups and there are major companies, but if those that are major companies can give us the solutions that we need, we basically said, yes, it's got to be more powerful. So stop thinking about a few dribbling megabits to some sites. I want gigabits and 10 gigabits, so please achieve that. We said we wanted complete software control, so please make it's software programmable. Please develop completely digitized payloads. So again, they were able to react to those needs, and if they can do that with a scalable company, that's just fine. But what we'll see is it's not just Boeing. And you'll see a number of announcements that were coming down the pipeline is you need to innovate in space. You need to innovate with the software control layer so that we can provide as much capacity to as many people. You can follow a ship or a plane with exactly how much capacity as it needs to. All these things are very, very doable these days. And ultimately, we're going to disrupt the ground equipment as well. We're pushing the vendors there to virtualize their equipment, to have much standardized hardware, and again, everything done in software, because everything has to be software controlled. So I'm not saying we're going to go to new space versus traditional space, but ultimately, everybody seems to be reacting well in this direction of disruption, software virtualization, and software control. And, you know, we'll be doing all these things very, very quickly because this constellation is launching in 2021. So we'll have a fantastically powerful system there with a say, space, software, and ground layer.
Mr. Ambrose, recently I found Lockheed Martin's fingerprints in many new space companies like Rocket Lab or Tyvek. How do you feel regarding that? Is it a matter of creating a galaxy of new space companies around Lockheed Martin, or are they, let's say, destined to be taken over someday?
Yeah, thanks for that question. The way we look at it is really focused on our customer's mission and how to bring value to a customer. So it's not that we do one or the other. It's actually we look at this holistically, and what can we do to accelerate technology for our customers, whether it be a commercial or one of our many government customers. So in some cases we invest, like the two you mentioned, and can we participate with that, help bring them along, and also consume the product, right? Can we launch satellites, for instance, on Rocket Lab, and we clearly are about ready to launch a couple satellites using the Tyvek platform. So, you know, it just depends what happens, how things develop. We also have our own development. You know, we spend, the last 5 years, we spent over $2 billion in our own investments and development of our own systems going forward. What was said right here is we're trying to move as fast as we can to create that value. And how do you give our customers, you mentioned how long the satellite lasts. We have 25-year specs on satellites. You look at how much the technology turns over. If we don't put digitization and programmability and more than that, you know, software definability up there, you know, we can't support their missions as their consumers and their clients, you know, change over. The other part we talk about new space with different companies. I'd like to build on the global side of this. I believe there's now at least 80 countries participating in space in some capacity. So that's the other part of, if you want to call it new space, or everyone's interest there. And we're going to have to come up with some new approaches. I mean, I don't build a satellite that doesn't have multi-country support in some capacity, whether it's supply chain. 60 cents on the dollar of every value that I deliver goes out to the supply chain. But more importantly, there's partnership. We have, you know, Airbus built a European service module. It's going to go to Orion. It's going to take the first people back up to space and deep space. Sitting today, NASA has InSight that we built, the landers sitting on Mars. That has a French and German critical instrument, science instrument. It's a global system, and that's what's powerful about space and what we like about it. And then what we're going to have to do is somehow, and we haven't talked about, is we have to have standards, not just for satellites, designs, and all this. How are we going to operate in space? There's too much debris left. What are measures? How do we keep it sustainable? What are the procedures, and how do we enforce those on that? Small little CubeSats are done for science lessons. You know, how do we have standards? They're left up there dormant. We have to bring those back down. By the way, if you're in that, NASA's website will tell you how to do that. It's free of charge. And I'm sure ESA has the same thing. But I think it's how do we bring mission to bear for our customers? How do we involve the multitude of our supply chain and do it well?
Well, since I promised, there will be questions from the audience.
Peter DeSelding, Space Intel Report. First, for Rick Ambrose, very quickly, you had a proposal going into Scotland to launch a small vehicle there. I'm not sure what vehicle it is. You've had about a year to think about that. Is that still a good idea? And if it is, what rocket are you using? And for J.P. Hemingway, most of this is launcher stuff, but I'm not going to ask you about launchers. You mentioned your MEO program and power, but you've also got a procurement coming for something called SES Next, which looks kind of cool as well. Has that got board support? Are you still moving forward on that? What can you tell us about that? And for Danielle, the next ESA ministerial meeting, are we to suppose that you're going to be giving little packets of peanuts to 5 or 6 different countries to all develop their own domestic launch service? Is that a possibility? Norway, UK, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Germany. I mean, they all want to do something with their industry, but that doesn't sound like a winning business proposition. And for Rakesh, you'd mentioned that ISRO Antrix has 60 or 70% of its revenue coming, or 50 or 60% of its revenue coming from new space. Do you think that's sustainable given the unbelievable competition there's out there, notably from Rocket Lab, but not just Rocket Lab?
Okay, this will be like rapid fire answers, so I'll hand the mic down. I don't. So, real quick, our job is to support the UK government and their ambition to put small launchers up, and they've selected the site there, and they'll announce what rocket in the future. Several.
So on what you termed SES Next, for those who don't know, it's this, I call it an extension of this production line capability of satellites, so as much standard designs as possible, as much software control as possible, so that you can call them off the production line with more like a 18-month into space timeline rather than a 5-year into space timeline. Still incredibly excited about that. We've got some fantastic proposals from all of the vendors coming in right now, so we're in a selection process. We'd like to conclude as soon as we can.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for this second roundtable. But to be clear, our proposal to the ministerial, it's over 90%. It's on independent access to space, and it's clear that the relative importance will increase also in Europe. So objective number 1 is clearly to support, to have Ariane 6 and Vega C on the market. Number 2 is to increase the competitiveness at the time horizon 2025 of these 2 launchers. And number 3 is to build the technology blocks for future space transportation solutions for institutional needs first. So this is really the spine of our proposal. Now, this roundtable was a bit about the new dimension, or the private investments and what we can take out in what you call new space. And there, ESA is simply saying, if there are economic operators on this continent who are willing to put their own funds on the table, and they are requiring a certain expertise on which ESA can help, and provide that there are corresponding member state supports, then we will just support it. But this is complementing a commercial dimension which opens up potentially for new markets. But as I told you also, ESA will not judge if this will go through or not. That's not our business. We are working for independent access for space for Europe, and for this we have Ariane 6 and Vega C and the solutions beyond of them.
You want also a question? Yeah. I think this is a round table. So we did do that analysis when we proposed to ISRO about the small launcher that is designed for the new space. And what we found is that, see, until now, our costing is based on a piecewise manufacturing mode using the subcontractors, etc. We are not in production right now. But this is the first time that we propose that this vehicle to be competitive, we have to go into production and derive the economies of scale. So this analysis was done. And we found that if we follow that model, that is what Antrix proposed to ISRO, that we will follow that model, we'll take this to industry, you give the end-to-end responsibility to us, we will do it. And if we do it that way, we are seeing that with the whatever data is available in the market, we will be competitive. But with the real competition will come from Indian startups who are also developing small launches. If that comes, then it will be a real competition out there, because they will also be deriving the advantages of low-cost Indian manufacturing setup. And what price point they will operate is not clear. So this is something that we have to wait and see.
Any other question? No.
Thank you. One question on the structure of the satellite manufacturing industry is, I see this model is shifting from some made-for-purpose GEO satellite to some flexible and more multi-purpose new satellites. Would you expect the industry to consolidate going forward, and how more generally the economics are shifting?
I think the consolidation question is about satellite manufacturers, so that's obviously we're a satellite operator, but I think the trend you say is correct. I think there will be both. I think there will be certain applications that need a bespoke, very heavy-duty design to replace, certain satellites probably already in orbit to replicate what they do. But for these other ones, the flexibility is truly powerful. The time to space is really important. The ability to potentially move it from one slot to another slot and then change how the beamforming goes and the coverage goes, that is incredibly powerful. Whether I believe that should drive consolidation, I don't know. I like competition in the manufacturing space. It keeps everyone keen and eager, so I maybe defer that part of the question.
Yeah, I think you said it right. Most people don't like consolidate, want to maintain competitiveness here, but I also think if we truly make this a vibrant marketplace and new capabilities in space, there won't need to be consolidation. And you kind of poked a couple things about the large satellites, bespoke satellites, or the smaller ones. We're saying all the above, not either or, it's and. Where everyone keeps talking about small sats, I have more RFPs in to go to larger satellites, and I'm talking about commercially. Matter of fact, Ariane just launched one of our Arabsat satellites earlier in the year, very successfully and very accurately. Probably one of the largest ones we built, 20 kilowatts. We now have phone calls in for 30 kilowatt satellites. So we're seeing the market actually go down multiple channels. And so as a manufacturer, builder satellites, our approach is we just enable what our customers want. If you want a bunch of small ones, we can do that. If you want satellites a little larger, MEO or GEO or whatever configuration, or really is there a hybrid solution to that? I think everyone's experimenting with those business models, and I do believe the market will judge it, for each person where they're going to end up on that data transfer and that data capability.
You see more RFPs today. You've got a product line that goes from pretty small to really large. You see more RFPs today for larger satellites?
For larger satellites, correct. On commercial, well, we see both, but where people say, well, they're only going to stay small, we are seeing a mixture now. I think as the operators sort out their business models, some, as you well know, Peter, is going to stay GEO. The other ones are going to do LEO. A few we're seeing in the MEO, the mix, but we're seeing the large satellites you think wouldn't be getting larger, they're getting larger. And from the last conference, think about certain launch vehicle companies that are coming with 7-meter fairings. We're actually getting requests. I thought they want to do a multi-sat launch on those. No, can you give us one, and I'm not going to say who, that could go, it's more than one company that can fit in a 7-meter fairing. And that will be a very big satellite, by the way.
Maybe to complement, just in a few words, I will not comment obviously on the consolidation, but what is true is that the traditional market of GEO satellites, where Ariane 5 was the champion, the 3 tons and the 6 tons, is over. And what we see is that the market has been in the down. What we see, at least with the different satellite manufacturers, that they have really innovated a lot. That they are preparing, and even some of them have already, let's say, won some contracts with their new platform, or their new innovative platform, and this deserves a lot of flexibility. Some will ask for direct geo injection because of the speed to go, and we are challenged as a, let's say, launcher industry or launch service to be able to perform these very different types of mission, which we are not used to that. So I think the market was in a down, but now, thanks to innovation, thanks to acceleration, I think it's again, let's say, raising in different directions, much more, let's say, flexible, versatile, and various, and this is driving us as well in our choices for the future of Ariane.
One more thing to mention on that too is what's really helping us, or help disrupt large, small. Electronics are electronics, but we're doing more with additive manufacturing. 5 years ago, I did a dozen parts. Last year, we did 14,000 different parts in that area. And some of the virtual designs where we can virtualize and do this and digitize this programming is having a huge impact. And actually kind of converging the timelines a little bit too. I mean, they'll never perfectly converge. So it's an exciting time to be in the industry. I just say that.
Well, I wanted to ask another question, but I'm told I can't. So, thank you very much, all of you. Well, I've seen you've all integrated the concept of streamlined decision processes, reactivity, flexibility, and I hope that you won't be surprised by the next disruption that is really coming. Thank you very much.